Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Zones 33, 34, and more Zoomformation call. Today is Monday, December the 7th. And as you could tell from the videos, the partial first one and the one that we saw secondly, we are recognizing Rotary's monthly emphasis, and in December, that is disease prevention and treatment. And today we're very fortunate to have two experts who will share information with us. But before we do that, we do have a special cameo guest today. And so I would like to, for the first time ever, introduce our Rotary International Director nominee, Jeremy Hurst. Jeremy has been elected and certified to serve as our director in Rotary year 2022-2023. He will be following Director Peter Cow, whose term will end on June 30th in 2022. Jeremy is a member of the Rotary Club of Grand Cayman. Many of you may recognize his name or his face because he recently served as our overall general chair for the Summit of Champions. So he did a fabulous job there, and we know that he's going to do the same in his role as director. So allow me to introduce, for the first time as Rotary International Director nominee, Jeremy Hurst. Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and good afternoon, I guess it is, to everybody. Great to see you all here today, and with the festive spirit. You'll notice I'm not using a Zoom background right now. This is actually a real background. Michelle, my wife, has very kindly put a beautiful Christmas tree behind me to get that festive spirit going. So I thank her for that. But today I just wanted to touch a little bit and quickly in 5 minutes, sort of a bit about my Rotary story. I mean, many of you I know well, and many of you shared the odd rum at a bar at a conference, but I'm not sure if I've gone into my background. So I'll do that as best I can with the high points very quickly. For the low points, you'll have to get me again at some bar at some point in time in the future. So I was born and raised in Rochester, Kent, England in 1961, educated at University College London and the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, in London, from 1978 to 81. I then joined a major corporation, Vickers PLC, is one of the world's largest engineering conglomerates. We owned Rolls-Royce motor cars, Bentley cars, we made tanks, we worked in the Spitfire factory that made planes during the war. But at university, I'd studied land development and environmental studies, so I went into their property division. 5 years later, I relocated to the Cayman Islands on a short-term contract representing the same country. I had planned to stay there. I had ambitions to go back to the UK and set up my own businesses within UK and Europe. But the shareholders of that local entity in Cayman suggested I enjoy this, join this group called Rotary. And I'd heard about it in the UK, but frankly, you know, that old adage, male, stale, and pale, was the only thing I could think of. And I managed to avoid going for 3 occasions. I remember it well. And on the last occasion, they said, next time we're sending a car to pick you up. So I was basically press ganged into joining Rotary. And when I got there, I couldn't believe it. I found an amazingly vibrant, relevant organization, highly respected in the community, with all ages, all professions, from the plumber to the equivalent of a prime minister, all doing great projects. We recently built the boys' home, the girls' home. We ran the local carnival. This actually seemed like fun. And I also missed the leadership development opportunities that I had in a big corporation in the UK, and I found these again in Rotary. So Rotary's played an integral part of my life from day one, and very much become part of my DNA, both with my work and my personal life. Initially, it actually changed my life. I joining Rotary, I was asked to serve on the board, ended up becoming community service director. Next year, I was asked by what is now a past district governor, Bobby Bottom, one of my Rotary mentors, who was the incoming president, to be on his board. And I only had 6 months of my contract yesterday. I said, Bobby, I'm only going to be here for 6 months. He said, Jeremy, stay anyway. I know you have a future in Rotary. You can transfer back into the UK. I said, fine. So I went on his board, and during that period, he convinced me to stay in the Cayman Islands. So it was a major life-changing event. And frankly, that's the reason I'm here today, is because of Rotary. And it's determined my success ever since, and it's been totally entwined in my life. So 7 years later, I became the youngest president, the club's then youngest president in 1995 to 96. RI president was Herb Brown at the time. His motto was act with integrity, serve with love, and work for peace. It's amazing how past district governors remember and past presidents remember the themes in the years that they served. I was really enjoyed that year. Since that time, of course, had numerous positions. A very unusual 10-country, 16-island district, District 7020. And I was governor in the first class of 2013-14, had a great opportunity to really understand what is really a microcosm of the Rotary world in our Caribbean district, you know, from the richest countries in the world, such as the one I'm very lucky to live in, to some of the poorest, like Haiti and other countries which really struggle. So a massive opportunity for international service and making Rotary. And because of that, we have very, very vibrant Rotary within the districts. I was then given the opportunity to serve as an ARC, along with Art McQueen and George Robertson Burnett, and really got a firm understanding of the challenges of membership growth and membership retention through that process, and put that to good work, and then had the honor of being asked to serve on the RI's membership committee from 2015 to 2017. And I'm really passionate coming out of that about the opportunities we've got to grow Rotary. And I think that, of course, is one of the biggest challenges now, in particular in North America. And I look forward to putting those experiences to good use. I was part of the team at that time that made the recommendations, flexibility to the Council of Legislation. And I'm very excited about the direction that we've been taking right now, both with the current strategic plan that Stephanie, I know, did a phenomenal job pulling together, and also with the initiatives we've got going forward about how we may restructure part of Rotary, which is a new and innovative way of thinking, and one that needs to be fleshed out and developed, but certainly one that we need to face head on if we're going to reverse the membership challenges we're seeing currently in North America. I also, through my regional district opportunities, became chair of the Handwash Steering Committee, was there from the very start of this program, which has been described as one of the most audacious and ambitious programs the Rotary world has taken on since polio. We're trying to bring clean water, sanitation, and good hygiene to the whole of Haiti, 11 million people, one of the poorest countries in the world. And that, again, has led me to some tremendous opportunities for leadership development, managing that committee on a week-to-week basis, helping to build its business plan, its strategic plan. In fact, I can directly correlate that to my recent appointment about a year and a half ago as the chair of, in my business, of the global board for leading real estate companies of the world. And the very assets that I took from Handwash and also from Rotary as a whole, were very much relevant to that position. And so again, Rotary and my personal and my work life intertwining and benefiting from each other. And that's been really the story of my life. Rotary has always been there. I'm very lucky to have a partner in Michelle that not only decorates beautiful Christmas trees, but also is passionate about my passion for Rotary. And she's there every second of every visit with me. And I know many of you know her as well as you know me, and actually probably prefer her to hang out with her rather than hang out with me, which I think is a great thing. So we're very excited about the coming years. I'm so happy to have had Peter and Stephanie there as my mentors. I know they're tremendously big shoes to fill, but I will do my utmost to do it. And of course, I see another one of my mentors there, David Stovall, who's on the call, actually coincidentally sitting right next to me on my screen. Again, a very close friend of mine, someone who's given me tremendous advice and support, as many of you have. I think it's going to be a tremendous year, few years coming up. I'm excited to be working with you. I look forward to working with you and representing each and every one of you. My goal is to try and ensure every Rotarian in our zones and also globally has had the experience and gets what I've got from our tremendous organization. In closing, I want to wish all of you and your families the very best for the holiday season, and have a great new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy, for sharing your Rotary story and allowing us to get to know a little bit more about you. We are definitely looking forward to your leadership as RI Director. Now on to our program. I am very honored this afternoon to be able to present our first speaker, Dr. Amy Hartman. Amy is an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh, where her primary faculty appointment is in the Department for Infectious Disease and Microbiology. She has done considerable research and work that's taken her to many places around the globe, and she's worked on serious health events such as the Ebola virus outbreak in Zaire, as well as Marburg hemorrhagic fever in Angola in 2005. And now she continues to add to the body of research and application through work at the Center for Vaccine Research at the Graduate School of Public Health at the University of Pittsburgh. So without any more to do, I will turn it over to Dr. Hartman, and she is going to share with us today some information about vaccine research and development. Dr. Hartman.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate hearing from you and meeting you virtually. Today, I will be giving you a presentation on what we're doing at the Center for Vaccine Research with regards to COVID-19, and I'll give you a little bit of an update on COVID vaccines that are currently in the pipeline. My background is in bench research, and so I'm trained as a virologist studying viruses, and I've been at the University of Pittsburgh for over 10 years now in the Center for Vaccine Research. And Pitt has a long history of vaccine research going back to the days of polio with Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine. And so we've built upon that history and have formed this Center for Vaccine Research that is now led by our director, Dr. Paul Dupre, who came about 2 years ago and has like systematically changed the way we approach vaccine research and the way we are addressing COVID-19. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are in this CVR and what we do. And so essentially we're a group of 15 experts in infectious diseases. These 15 experts study everything from viruses to bacteria, lots of different types, and we come together as sort of a hub of expertise in studying emerging infectious diseases, which is quite timely given COVID. So some of the things that interest us, we're focused on emerging diseases, okay? And so emerging diseases are found all over the world, right? A lot of these kind of fly under the radar with regards to the public unless something happens. So obviously we're in the midst of SARS-CoV-2 outbreak and the COVID pandemic, but there are many other emerging diseases, including Zika that you might have heard of several years ago, Ebola, things like West Nile virus. So these are all the different types of viruses and bacteria that faculty in the CVR study. And obviously now with SARS-CoV-2 emerging, a lot of our focus has been on that. And so what we are in the Center for Vaccine Research really is a hub for studying what we call host pathogen interactions. So how does an infectious disease interact with the human host? And we also research preclinical interventions. That's vaccines and drugs to prevent or treat diseases. So a lot of our efforts are focused on pathogenesis, which means understanding how pathogens cause disease in the human body. We also work on designing interventions, vaccines, and therapeutic drugs. And we do this in the context of emerging diseases of global importance. And so we like to think of ourselves as taking things from the academic bench to real world translatability. So how did we get here? The Center for Vaccine Research at Pitt has been in existence for over 10 years. We were initially formed in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the anthrax bioterrorism that occurred shortly thereafter. Within the Center for Vaccine Research, we have a high containment research facility, what we call biosafety level 3, as shown here in the example picture. And so our biosafety level 3 facility was constructed after the anthrax bioterrorism event, and it was funded from the National Institutes of Health as a way to enhance the nation's infrastructure for work with pathogens of serious health human consequence. And so the NIH funded a number of different research facilities across the country. The University of Pittsburgh was one of them. And so we have this biosafety level 3 facility where we can work with emerging infectious diseases. We've been open since 2008. We've been working safely during that time with viral and bacterial pathogens. And so our goal really here is to connect the basic research with cutting edge preclinical animal models for vaccines and therapeutics. And we actually are mandated to assist in the event of natural outbreaks like COVID-19. So we are a central part of our national biodefense and emerging infectious disease infrastructure. So what are we doing in particular with respect to COVID-19 as well as other diseases? So we are prepared to respond in real time to assist the public health response, and that may be with regards to diagnostics or other things. We also provide subject matter experts like myself, who are experts in emerging diseases, high containment viruses, animal models, vaccine and therapeutic testing. And we also do public outreach, like what I'm doing today, science communication with the public, trying to bridge the gap between scientists and the public, which is very much needed these days. So with respect to COVID-19 in particular, in January, when the outbreak started, the CVR pulled together a task force of 5 faculty members, of which I am one of them. And we all sort of teamed up to address different aspects of this newly emerging virus. And very early on in February, we obtained initial isolates of SARS-CoV-2 from 2 locations, from the CDC in Atlanta, as well as from a collaborator in Munich, Germany. And they arrived at Pitt on Valentine's Day of 2020. From there, we did initial animal model studies in several different animal models, right? So one of the main ways that a vaccine or a drug gets to the point where it can undergo clinical trials is through testing first in animal models to see if the vaccines or therapeutics can work in animals. And so collectively, we've worked on a number of different animal models. We've published several papers describing our work, including human clinical grade PET CT imaging. Like if you would go to the doctor and have a CAT scan done, we have the same type of equipment in our high containment facility where we can image animals and watch disease progression as it goes on. And so we are now testing a couple of different vaccines in our animal models. We're testing a couple of different therapeutic drugs for their effectiveness in the animal models. And so we've been continuing to work on COVID-19 as the pandemic has evolved. And so I want to get to talking a little bit about vaccines for COVID-19, and I want to remind everybody or tell you about the different types of vaccines globally, right? So if you think of all types of vaccines, they fall into a couple of different categories. The first category I have listed on here is live attenuated. And this is a weakened version of the real virus, right? So it's weakened so it doesn't cause disease, but it can induce an immune response and provide protection. And then there are the most basic type of vaccine is a killed or inactivated vaccine. This is where you take the real virus and you inactivate it so that it cannot replicate. And then you give that to people and it will induce an immune response. So these first two, live attenuated and inactivated vaccines, are sort of the oldest type of vaccine we've had. And now we have more advanced vaccines that consist of things like subunit vaccines, which is where you just take a piece of the protein of a pathogen and use that to induce an immune response. Or we have other types of vaccines that use nucleic acid. And so a lot of the ones that you hear about in the news regarding COVID-19 have to do with nucleic acid vaccines. They either comprise DNA or RNA. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So this is generally speaking the different types of vaccines that exist. And then an important thing to keep in mind is that the traditional vaccine development process is a very, very long process. Over 10 years is typically how long it takes to develop a new vaccine. And what goes into that are a number of different things. So early on, we call this the preclinical stage. This is the basic research stage where researchers are testing different ideas on how to construct a vaccine. They'll test that vaccine in animal models. Same thing can be applied for a drug or a therapy. They do drug discovery, target validation. So all of this is very early preclinical type of work that can take years. And with respect to COVID-19, this type of work has been ongoing for a very long time since the original SARS outbreak in 2003, which was a different species, but related to the virus that causes COVID-19. So there are many years of work that go into this initial stage. And then once a promising candidate is identified, it can move through the pipeline, which involves manufacturing the vaccine, doing official testing in animals, and then initiating clinical trials in people, which generally take a long time. So you start with phase 1 clinical trials, which is a small number of people looking at safety and looking at dosage. Then phase 2 is generally both safety and immunogenicity in a slightly larger group of people. And then phase 3 is really when a larger usually thousands of people are enrolled, and it looks at not just safety, but also efficacy. So does the vaccine or therapeutic actually work to prevent the disease that you're targeting? And so then once all of that data is in hand, it undergoes regulatory review by agencies such as the FDA prior to approval. So this process takes a very, very long time. And what we've seen with COVID is that because of the urgent nature is that a lot of this process has been condensed in order to speed up the development of a vaccine. And so what I'll tell you is that what has not really been condensed is this early phase where vaccine candidates and therapeutic candidates are discovered in the laboratory, because that's been ongoing for the past 10 years. And even though we didn't know about SARS-CoV-2 at that time, we knew about viruses like it. And so scientists were able to study these over time. So this is why it's really important to continue basic research on emerging infectious diseases, because we never know what type of disease is going to emerge. And if we know nothing about it, we are starting from square one, shall we say, at the next emergence. So we had quite a bit of data and progress in hand prior to the emergence in the end of December in China. And then the other area where we've been able to save time is in the clinical trials. Some of these have been condensed and overlapped, like combined phase 1 and phase 2 trials to save time. And saving time does not mean jeopardizing safety. There's still the same safety protocols and safety documentation in place. It's just sort of condensed in a timeline. And then where we are right now is that you've probably heard in the news that a couple of vaccines have gotten what we call emergency use authorization, or EUA, which is where the FDA hasn't officially approved the vaccine for use in people, but it has given the go-ahead for use in an emergency basis. So it's a bit of a different sort of regulatory and paperwork approach, but it's the way to get a vaccine into people as fast as possible, which is what we all need to go back to normality. So if you're interested in finding out more about vaccines for SARS-CoV-2, there's this really great coronavirus vaccine tracker on the New York Times website that is updated frequently, and it will tell you all about the different vaccines that are out there and the different phases that they're in. So you can see as of a couple of days ago, we have 7 vaccines that are in limited use. Nothing is listed as approved because I said that the FDA hasn't officially approved anything yet, but they've given limited use or early use authorizations. So we have at least 41 vaccines in clinical trials on people, which is amazing when you think about it for a disease that just emerged less than a year ago. A lot of other vaccines under investigation in animal studies. And so some of the vaccines that you'll hear about in the news are listed on this slide. And the three that have made it the farthest this quickly are the three that are highlighted in red. And so the two on the bottom are the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA-based vaccines, which use slightly different approaches to achieve the same thing. So these are mRNA-based vaccines, whereas the AstraZeneca vaccine, that's also called the Oxford vaccine, this is a live attenuated vaccine where you use an adenovirus vector that contains one of the proteins from SARS-CoV-2, and that is the vaccine. So these are the ones that have made it this far. The others are coming as well. It's just these ones have made it the farthest this soon. So the question that everybody asks is, when will we have a COVID vaccine? And the answer is a lot sooner than what everybody initially thought. And it does depend on a lot of different factors. So we're at the point where emergency use authorization has been given for a couple of the vaccines, but that we still have a long way to go from that time point. So the major issues to consider going forward is scaling up manufacturing of the vaccine, which is difficult and costly and not easy to do. Distribution of the vaccine from the site of manufacturing to different states, to hospital systems, to doctors' offices. There's a lot of logistics involved in that. Prioritization of who receives the first doses, and we heard a little bit about this in the news in the past week, right? So frontline workers like the healthcare workers or folks in nursing homes are going to be the priority. Other high-risk individuals, eventually everybody will be able to get the vaccine, but it's going to be a several-month rollout. And how smoothly this goes is going to depend on a lot of factors. It's amazing that we've gotten this far this quickly now, and my hope is that we don't have too many hiccups from here on out, getting to the point where the majority of us can go and receive the vaccine. That's what I hope we can get to within the next couple of months. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll be glad to take any questions depending on how much time allows. You can visit our website. We're on social media. You can visit my lab's website. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Dr. Hartman, thank you so very much. And we do have a few questions for you in the chat, and I will go through those with you. First of all, so far the vaccines have received approval from pharmaceutical companies. Do you expect more university research settings like PITS as we go forward into other areas?
Can you repeat that? What was the question?
So far the vaccines have been developed by pharmaceutical companies. However, we do know that places like PITS are moving forward with research. Do you expect that there will be more university-based research going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the vaccines that are coming out of the pharmaceutical industry originated in universities. They either originated in universities or the National Institutes of Health or European universities. So all of this stuff has originated in university. Pharmaceutical companies do not have the money or the expertise or the desire to do basic research on vaccine and therapeutic development. That's not their strong suit. They wait until the universities have done all of the legwork to then take the best candidates forward, because the pharmaceutical companies, their expertise is making a whole ton of a vaccine. That's what they do. They distribute it. They don't do the drug discovery. They don't do the initial animal studies or anything like that. Right, so it truly is a partnership. It truly is you know, US taxpayer funded medical research that has allowed us to get this far this quickly.
Okay, so there's another person has heard a concern that a vaccine may protect the recipient from succumbing to the COVID symptoms, but may not stop the throat from getting infected and shedding virus for a few days. In other words, allowing the recipient to infect others. Have any of the vaccines been shown to prevent virus shedding?
Yes, so that is part of what they look at when they evaluate the vaccines. And there are instances where a vaccine may protect from severe disease, but may not protect from shedding. But I think that's a needle that we're not able to thread at this point, just because it's too soon in the evaluation of the clinical trial data. So one of the issues with trying to move quickly through that vaccine development pipeline is that there is not enough time in between vaccination of the enrolled individuals to really look at things like the duration of immunity, right? And the effect on things like shedding. But even if a vaccine provides protection from disease but does not protect from shedding, we're still a million miles ahead of where we are right now with no vaccine.
Yes, ma'am. And we have time for one more question quickly. If someone tested positive for COVID, should they still take the vaccine?
Yes, they should still take the vaccine. It's not going to hurt you if you have already tested positive. And if you are somebody who tested positive and had no symptoms, then you definitely want to get the vaccine, just to ensure that the likelihood of you getting reinfected is eliminated.
Okay. Thank you again so much for being with us today, and we'll turn the program back to Director Stephanie and Peter.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Hartman. That was an excellent presentation. Very clear, very lucid. I think we all enjoyed your slides.
Good.
Great to hear about the different types of vaccines and the vaccine development process. And I think we all take some pride that you represent the University of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a special place in the hearts of my co-director, Stephanie. She's from Pittsburgh. So it's wonderful that today we can have the benefit of a presentation from one of our own universities. So thank you very much again.
Well, I really appreciate the invitation.
Great. And now we have another presentation from someone who may be well known to many of us, Dr. Carol Pandek. Carol is Miss Polio in Rotary International. Just reading from her bio, she's the director of Polio Plus, Rotary's global effort to eradicate polio, working in partnership with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And she's held this position since the year 2000. And I want to just quickly read a sentence that I found on LinkedIn, which I think describes Carol very well. Carol has provided the link over the years with those of us who serve as volunteers and our professional staff at the Rotary Foundation regarding the elimination of polio. Carol provides encouragement, positive results, and a caring attitude that explodes by providing energy for many of us when we are in India and elsewhere, giving polio drops to thousands. Carol is the strength and go-to person at the Rotary Foundation for polio information and words of encouragement. Carol, we're delighted to have you join us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that kind introduction. Gosh, you never know what's out there on the internet. So what I would like to do today is provide a bit of an update on how our Rotary National Polio Plus committees and our Polio Plus infrastructure is continuing to support the COVID-19 response. So I'm going to share my screen. So, you know, when COVID-19 first was on the scene, I actually gave a presentation about how the National Polio Plus committees, of which we have 26 around the world, are helping to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And what I'd like to do today is to review that early response and also talk about what the National Polio Plus committees have continued to do. Now, just as a reminder, Rotary works with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and more recently, Gavi, in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. And through this partnership, we have made tremendous progress in our effort to eradicate polio. In 2020, only 2 countries were reporting cases of the wild polio virus, and that's Pakistan and Afghanistan. And 19 million people are walking today who otherwise would have been affected by polio, paralyzed by polio. So when COVID-19 came upon us, our National Polio Plus committees immediately helped respond to the pandemic. So for example, vaccine carriers that the Pakistan National Polio Plus Committee provided to the government were being used to transport COVID-19 specimens. Also in Pakistan, our Rotary Resource Centers, our polio resource centers, which are resource centers in the most remote areas of the country, are being used as COVID-19 testing spots. In Nigeria and Pakistan, and I'm sure in many other countries, our Rotary National Polio Plus committees are providing emergency food rations for families. In Pakistan, also providing personal protection equipment and refurbishing ventilators for those who are affected by COVID. And in India, where for polio, Rotary had established what is called the Ulema, or Religious Leaders Committee, to have religious leaders provide positive messages about the benefits of polio immunization. That Ulema committee is now also providing positive messages about how to protect yourself from COVID. So I recently surveyed our National Polio Plus committees to ask how they are supporting the COVID-19 response after these many months. And I got some really great examples that I wanted to share with you. I think what we'll see in these slides is that while supporting the COVID-19 response and supporting communities, they're also promoting the End Polio Now message. So we have a dual role of protecting from COVID, but also continuing to deliver a polio message. So for example, in Mali, the National Polio Plus Committee is providing masks to community health centers, but you can also see in the slide is that they're also providing masks to not only the nurses, but also to the community members who are coming for health reasons. Also in Mali, they're providing hand washing facilities in the crowded marketplace and at the motor parks. And again, you can see that these water facilities have both the End Polio Now message, the National Polio Plus Committee in Mali, so promoting both a message of how to protect yourself from COVID, but also important messages about polio. In Pakistan, we've partnered with UNICEF to develop informational posters about how to protect yourself from COVID. And here's another example of a hand washing station that has been set up at an artificial limb center. And of course, with polio immunizations continuing in Pakistan and Afghanistan and other countries, Rotary is helping to support the frontline healthcare workers with masks and hand sanitizers, both through our National Polio Plus committees and also through our grants to the World Health Organization and UNICEF. In Nigeria, they have continued to distribute food packages to needy families, and you can see the large number of food packages that are being prepared for distribution here. And the team members are wearing the End Polio Now t-shirts and hats, again, promoting both messages about helping the community and polio. And they've done a tremendous job in educating the community with social media campaigns and public image campaigns, whereby we're talking about how to stay safe, again, from COVID, while promoting both the National Polio Plus Committee, Rotary, and End Polio Now. In Myanmar, they had models on World Polio Day modeling how to properly wear a mask, again, with the dual message of polio and how to protect yourself from COVID. And in India, the National Polio Plus Committee, via this van here, which is the polio and measles van that's used in Delhi to promote messages about how to protect yourself from polio and measles, also did mask distribution, food distribution, and established a COVID-19 testing site in a leper colony and in the slums of Delhi. And this brings us to this moment in time in the pandemic where we're getting into the recovery phase as vaccines are becoming available. And when Dr. Hartman talked about the distribution of the vaccine in the United States and the extraordinary logistics that will be needed for that, you can multiply that thousands of times to think about how will we distribute a vaccine globally, especially in low and middle income countries. So our National Polio Plus Committee in India is partnering with some of our known partners. You can see on the slide WHO, the Gates Foundation, the CDC, UNICEF, Gavi, and others to talk about the distribution of the COVID vaccine in India. And the National Polio Plus Committee has been in touch with the Ministry of Health as well as the Prime Minister's office to share with them, again, Rotary's expertise in community mobilization through the National Polio Plus Committee and how successful that was for polio eradication in India, and how some of those skills and expertise can be used going forward when a vaccine is available. So it's sort of, we're entering a new phase, and I think that the role of the National Polio Plus committees will continue because a vaccine won't be available for a while. And even when a vaccine is available, it will be available for small portions of the population at first, as Dr. Hartman suggested, frontline healthcare workers and other essential workers, elderly, and won't get to the entire population for quite a while. So during that time, communities will still need to practice those activities that keep them safe from COVID. So there will still be that element for Rotary, but there is this new, we're getting into the new era of a vaccine being available. And I think at a very local level, Rotarians will be supporting their government's efforts to reach communities with the vaccine. So that concludes my brief report, and I'll stop sharing and see if there's any questions that people would like to ask.
So if anyone has questions of Dr. Pandek, if you'd like to put those into the chat pane, and if not, we'll maybe go back to Amy. Okay, Dr. Pandek, to what extent has the diversion of our Polio Plus infrastructure to COVID-19 impacted our progress on the eradication of polio, if any?
Yes, I mean, two things happened. First of all is that a lot of the infrastructure was utilized for the COVID-19 response, especially in the beginning when there was no system in place. And then there was also the pause in polio immunization activities for about 4 months, from March to July, to ensure that frontline healthcare workers were not in jeopardy from contracting COVID and that communities could stay safe. So I think we've seen a bit of a lull in activities in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Immunization campaigns got underway in September in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and both countries have held several or a couple campaigns to date. And I think that things are improving, but the pause did allow the virus to circulate more than we would have wanted it to.
Okay, and we have a question. Someone is asking if your PowerPoint would be is public data.
My PowerPoint is public data. Yes.
And how would they access it?
I can send it to should I send it to Stephanie maybe, or to you, David? And
If you'll send it to us, is it permissible to put it on our Rotary Zone's website?
absolutely.
Okay, so we will post that after it's received by Stephanie or me.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
All right, thank you, Carol. That was a wonderful presentation. I think we can take a lot of pride that we have someone with your expertise and background and professionalism overseeing the polio program, as you have done for the last 20 years. And I think we can take pride in seeing what Rotary is doing around the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. Time prevented you from really giving a much broader survey. Rotary is actively involved in the efforts to mitigate the effects of COVID-19, and we should take pride in that. So ladies and gentlemen, we've had two fantastic presentations today from Dr. Hartman and Dr. Pandek. I thank both ladies very much, very sincerely. We are now going to bring this session to a close. I want to announce that our next call, our Zoomformation call, will be on January the 4th, and the focus will be on, that's Vocational Service Month, the focus will be on Rotary Works, a unique zone-wide initiative focused on career transition assistance for Rotarians and Rotaractors, of which the main champion is our own director, Stephanie Urchick. So make a note to sign on January the 4th at noon for the next Zoomformation call. And before we close with the four-way test, on behalf of Stephanie and myself, I want to wish every one of you every good wish for the holiday season. Stay safe, keep well, continue to work and promote Rotary, and we'll see you in the new year. So without further ado, let's join Stephanie and myself in reciting the four-way test. Of all the things we think, say, and do, 1.
Is it the truth?
2.
Is it fair to all
Fair to all
concerned?
concerned. 3. Will it
Will
build
it build goodwill and better friendships?
4.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you all.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Great.